The Judicial Service Commission has recommended that President Cyril Ramaphosa suspend Western Cape High Court Judge President Judge Hlophe. Let's talk about this with Chris Oxtoby, researcher at the Democratic Governance and Rights Unit at the University of Cape Town. Chris, good to have you on the program. So is the Judge President suspension then, for all intents and purposes, a done deal?
For all intents and purposes, it is. The President does technically still have a discretion to decide whether or not to suspend. But I think in these circumstances, with the high profile of the case, with the seriousness of the original allegations, it's very hard to imagine that he wouldn't actually act on the recommendation and suspend the Judge President.
He was rather recently granted an appeal by the High Court, which did not find that there's strong merit necessarily for the appeal to be successful, but was concerned about the possibility that Hlophe could very well be the first judge in this country to face an impeachment proceeding. How much then is that appeal, that incomplete process now, how much of a complication could it pose for the President?
Well, I don't think much of a complication, because the suspension by its nature will only be temporary, and there is still going to be quite a process that will have to be gone through in Parliament. The next step in the process to determine whether or not the impeachment does indeed happen is that Parliament has to decide the matter. Parliament has to vote, and that process is going to take some time as well. So I think we've seen so many delays in this case, and we're on 13 or 14 years since the initial complaint was lodged. I think it is important that the matter does start moving to some kind of finality. So I think it would be appropriate in this case for the President to continue, notwithstanding the possible appeal or the pending appeal to the Supreme Court of Appeal.
And let's talk about the time it's taken to get to this point, because this is a case and allegations which have been in circulation for well over 10 years, if not closer to 15 years. I think let's revisit, for the purpose of people just catching up, what all this was all about, because the judge is said to have tried to improperly influence constitutional court judges at the time.
Yeah, it's an important thing to come back to try and remember how this all actually began, because I think so much time has passed, it's easy to lose sight of the seriousness of the actual allegations. So one has to go back to a point in our history and remember the point in time before former President Zuma in fact came into office, when there were various charges against him arising from the arms deal, and there was litigation ongoing as part of that process, and a case was before the Constitutional Court, and the allegation against the Judge President was that he had gone to the court and visited two of the judges hearing the case, and had, as you said, tried to improperly influence them in how they were deciding the case. And obviously that's, a lot of time has passed, and an entire Zuma presidency has passed since then. But obviously, if one thinks about it from the point of view of the institution of the judiciary, the seriousness of a judge who's not sitting as part of that panel, who's not even a member of that court, approaching judges in the highest court of the country and trying to influence them to decide a case a particular way, is extremely serious for the judicial institution. And those allegations form the heart of the issue, which leads us to where we are now. But we've had, as you say, over a decade of litigation and challenges to various aspects of the process. So that's in a nutshell why it's taken so long to get here.
So should this impeachment process then go ahead, it would be another first for Parliament at the moment, dealing with first set of impeachment hearings for a public protector, and Judge Hlophe is the Judge President in the Western Cape, no less. What is the process to be followed there should proceedings go ahead?
Well, that's a very good question, because as you mentioned, we've never actually been down this road before. We've never been rather this far along the process. of potential impeachment. So Parliament has never actually had to consider this question. So as we sit here now, we don't know exactly how Parliament is going to deal with it. My understanding is that the parliamentary process has been put on hold pending this litigation, this latest round of litigation that's been going on. So the next step will be for Parliament to determine exactly what process it is going to follow, what rules it's going to put in place, and eventually Parliament has to vote on the question of whether or not Judge President Hlophe should be removed from office. That needs at least a 2/3 majority in Parliament. So the ball is now in Parliament's court, but we don't yet know exactly how that process is going to play out because we've never seen anything like this happen before.
Do you foresee then any implications for the running of the courts in the Western Cape should the Judge President indeed be suspended, and perhaps reflections on how well he's done in running those courts, because he has received praise for some quarters for his work at that level?
Yeah, I mean that will be interesting to see what implications that has. In the normal course of events, one would expect that the Deputy Judge President would simply pick up the reins and that the court should function smoothly. Of course, it's a bit more complicated in the Western Cape because the Deputy Judge President and the Judge President have laid complaints and counter complaints against each other in the past year or so. So it will actually be interesting to see how that affects the functioning and the dynamics of the court. But there are plenty of experienced senior judges there, so I don't think one should anticipate that it should make a fundamental difference to the court's ability to function and dispense justice.
You touched on this earlier, but I want to go back just a bit to what was said by that full bench of the Gauteng High Court when it decided that indeed the appeal should be heard, primarily because it said on the basis that it raised matters of significant public importance. What are those issues, according to you, the sort of tests this is going to put us through as a country?
It's going to we're going to have to consider squarely what kind of conduct is expected of a judge, and what level of misconduct, or what level of failing to live up to that standard is required to remove a judge from office. And as we've said, we've never before had a situation where the process of impeachment or of removing a judge from office has got this far down the track. So we are in uncharted territory. We don't have any past examples to say this is the threshold for whether or not a judge is removed. I think as I've mentioned, the underlying issues to the complaint impact on questions of judicial independence, on individual conduct in the case of Judge President Hlophe. We've had instances where there have been some serious complaints against judges in the past, which haven't got this far. We've had cases where some judges have resigned from the bench before complaints can be considered. So it's a really important and significant moment. And removing a judge from office should be a difficult process, and one's always got to think carefully about the balance between ensuring that judges are held to account when they don't reach the standards that they're expected to in terms of their conduct. At the same time, you don't want to make it too easy to remove them because you need to protect their independence from possible interference. Mm-hmm. So I think that's that crucial balance, and we don't have any past examples before this of where we strike that balance. So it will be historic, and it will also be very important for the precedent that it sets for the future.
Chris Oxtoby, good to have your time. Thank you very much for being on Daytime Update today.